Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the beat. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty.
Good morning, Rockingham and Bellows Falls. It's Marty and Mike. We're here on the feed. It's October 12th, 2022. Fall's here. Fall is everything's peaking. We're here today with Mike Cancelleri and Josh Coates, and we're going to be talking about Frontline Foundation, a program that's here in Bellows Falls and helping out our veterans and our service people and our first responders. But first, Marty, with local events.
So it's the second week of Lyle Crocodile at the Bellows Falls Opera House. It's playing through the 18th. Classic movie tonight is The Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
I don't know if I can see the flying monkeys on the big screen.
No.
It was bad enough on the TV screen. Anyway, that's sponsored by James and James Plumbing. And I just have to revert to last week. I did get to go see Eddie and the Cruisers.
Yeah, how was it?
On the big screen. And I realized that how bad, like, the filming quality was in 80s movies. It was, but I forgot the surprise ending. So I was like, oh, I forgot the ending. So anyway, I won't spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen Eddie and the Cruisers. This week at Village Square Booksellers on Friday night at 7 p.m., Archer Mayer is going to be doing a book presentation, and I believe it is in Zoom capacity. So I know there's definitely a Zoom link. It wasn't clear to me whether it's
Whether he's
Zoom
gonna be
and
there or
in
not.
person.
Okay.
But anyway, if you go to the Village Square Booksellers, either their Facebook page, the Archer Mayer event page, or their website, you can get the Zoom link, and you can. He's talking about his newest Joe Gunther series book. The Flannel Festival is this weekend.
All right.
And I can tell you that Mike and Josh are very excited about going.
I didn't wear flannel today, though. Josh beat me to this.
He's been pre-gaming it all week.
So that's Saturday and Sunday, the 15th and 16th, up at Rockingham Hill Farm. There's music, there's food, there's flannel, there's coffee and cider through the Rotary. There's also the Fireman's Parade this weekend, which I just found out.
I just found
that
that's
out.
on
I thought
Sunday afternoon,
I thought I
right?
just missed it last weekend and didn't hear it, but it's Sunday afternoon. And
So big weekend.
coming up in November, we have Comedy Divas coming to the Bellows Falls Opera House. The Vermont Comedy Divas are the only all-female touring comedy group around. And I have seen them in the past, and they're very good, and that will be a benefit for the Greater Falls Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
So there's
So,
my local events.
Mike and Josh, welcome. Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I'm not exactly sure. Marty, you want to start this off? Or?
So I think I'm just going to read your little blurb because I
Yeah.
think it kind of sets the tone. So Frontline Foundations is a skill-based program for veterans and first responders that focuses on post-traumatic growth and resiliency using mindfulness skills. So those are a lot of those words that are kind of like, woo, woo, woo. So I think the first thing is to talk about post-traumatic and PTSD and really what is it and how does it present and is it real?
So, I can take that question. Post-traumatic stress disorder is something that you literally find in something called the DSM-5. It's a manual that gives all the mental health ailments that one can have. I don't like the term disorder. That's a personal thing because it is more of an injury. It is a physiological response to being exposed to trauma, and it can be from one event or it can be cumulative. And for the population that we serve, it is cumulative for the most part. Uniformed services people are out there and they are going into traumatic situations, and it has an impact on their brain. And basically, if I can sort of break it down as simply as I can, there is an animal part of our brain, and there's the prefrontal cortex. It's like that's what makes us human. The animal part of our brain reacts to danger, to outside things faster than our own brain can react to it, and we can think of a situation. So when we're exposed to trauma, we have a fight or flight or freeze response, and with post-traumatic stress, and particularly with complex trauma and repeated cumulative traumas, our body can get stuck in that fight or flight response. And to find our way out of it, you can't think your way out of it. It's the animal part of your brain reacting to things. So in those situations, it is vital that to keep you safe and those around you safe, particularly in uniformed services, and it's like a superpower then. It makes your body prepared to do the things and your mind prepared to do things that are difficult. When you're at home and you're going to the grocery store doing all those other things, the animal part of your brain can't figure that part out necessarily. It doesn't make the connection where, there's a young man or woman that's in the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, the next thing they're back in the United States, and the top part of your brain knows that you're in two different places, but the animal part doesn't necessarily know that. So that's why I say it's more of an injury than it is a disorder. To call it a disorder, it feels like people feel, well, that means there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, this is a predictable response to being exposed to trauma repeatedly.
That's the trouble I have with the term disorder. Like, that's great for health insurance companies, but disorder makes it sound like it's not predictable.
Right.
Like, oh, there's something unique about your situation. It's like, no. If you do these types of jobs and you are exposed to the types of things that veterans and first responders are exposed to, like, it's a highly predictable outcome. So disorder makes it sound like you're uniquely affected by this, and it's not unique at all.
I never thought about that, but you're right.
And do you think that's part of the evolution of, I guess, both how it has come about being discovered as a disorder or an injury, and the culture of the people that you're dealing with? It's like there's sort of this super, I don't want to say super macho, but the idea of that they are supermen, and therefore they can't be hurt or whatever. And the fact and the admission of injury is one of the issues, isn't it? And so as PTSD has come along, at first it was like, oh, buck up.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's being recognized, and I imagine there will be an evolution at some point where it's actually, and maybe we're at that point now. That's what we should be talking about.
I think we're at the beginning of the point where many people are starting to look at PTSD, if that's what you want to call it, as more of an injury. All of my clients who are firefighters and police officers would have no trouble at all taking a sick day if they had to have a knee replaced, or your shoulder comes out for the 5th time, and it's like, well, you're going to be in the back of the truck now because your shoulder came out. No big deal. Nobody has a problem with that. But we're still not at the point in our culture where we see trauma as an actual injury.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a huge step forward when we start to look at that in equal terms as an orthopedic injury. And I think we're getting there slowly, for sure. But it's like, how long can our culture ignore that these injuries are in our fire departments and police departments, and there are things that we can do to mitigate that kind of trauma. There's things that we can do to recover from trauma. There's things that we can do to prevent, or not to prevent, but to instill some skills and a good way of thinking about this stuff very early on when someone begins a career in uniform service. There's things that we can do to address this.
So along those lines, Mike, I know you've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years?
Something like, well, I've been in the mental health field for over 15, but with this population, it's been since 2016. Vets and first
But you were
responders.
sort of, and I don't want to say a pioneer, but you were in pioneering programs, at least in Vermont, that you sort of have been at this from the very beginning. And I'd like to ask, what do you find works? Because I know you use the term mindfulness, but I don't know that people in the audience actually, what in layman's terms, what is that, and how does it work?
Awesome. Mindfulness is the ability to choose where to put your attention. Period. That's what it is. People think because of the way it's discussed in the culture that mindfulness is a quality of who you are. Like, yes, Mike he lets things roll off his back. He doesn't get too upset. He can take a lot of work stress without having, that's not what mindfulness is about. Mindfulness is not a quality that you're born with. It's not about being a good person or a bad person. It's a skill that you can learn every bit as much as the skills that firefighters and police officers use every day are skills that you can learn. So an important hurdle that we overcome in talking about mindfulness is it's not about controlling your thoughts. Anytime you hear language about like, yes, we'll just you'll push those thoughts out of your head and only think productive thoughts. That's a fool's errand. You can't control your thoughts in that way. What you can learn to control is where you put your attention. So is your attention, you're having dinner with your significant other, is your attention on your significant other? Or is it thinking about all the mistakes that you think you made at that last call? Or what did, like your boss sends you an email like, come to my office at 8 a.m. on Monday and bring all of your personal belongings. And you're thinking like, what does that mean? Oh my God. And it's like, every human being, we all get lost in la la land. We all have anxiety. But what mindfulness is a set of skills that teach us how to control where our attention goes. So that I can choose to pay attention to my wife at dinner instead of replaying things from my past, or instead of being stuck in trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. It's about being in the here and now, the present moment, and it's all about your attention.
Okay. How do you do that?
How do you do that? In simplest terms, we do a variety of meditative or meditation type exercises, and the simplest of all mindfulness exercises is to sit down and shut up and close your eyes and just follow the flow of your breath with your attention. Feel the breath as it comes in. Maybe it feels cool. Feel the breath as it comes out. Maybe it feels a little warmer. And while you're just paying attention to this very simple flow in and out, your mind will start to wander immediately. And you'll be thinking, I got to get the hot dog buns on the ride home. What did my boss mean by that text message? And every time you notice that your mind has wandered, you go, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be focusing on the breath. And you bring your attention back to the breath. And then 1.5 seconds later, your mind goes right back to that thing. And that's the trick, is at that point, you don't beat yourself up. That's not a failure of the exercise, that is the exercise. Every time you notice your mind has wandered, you just come right back to the breath. And you get enough reps in. I use a lot of exercise metaphors for this because it's a skill and it's an exercise. The more reps you get at bringing your attention back, the next time you have a real heavy-duty memory or some real heavy anxiety about something in the future, you got all them reps in, you might just say to yourself, oh, you know what? I can put my attention back on my job, my wife, my kids, and I can worry about that stuff later. So that's the
So
quick.
you're literally creating mental muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. That's a
And
that's
by
a
the
phrase
way,
I
that's
like to
like
use.
one of the best explanations of mindfulness and the most succinct explanation of mindfulness I've heard.
Awesome. Cool.
Because and also for just the idea of meditation, like the mindfulness meditation. People think of meditation as this thing that is so unattainable because you have to be completely void of
Exactly. That's the biggest. So I thank you for your compliment, but I learned all of this from my clients, from hearing their feedback about how they experienced mindfulness and meditation being talked about. And it's exactly how it's in the culture. People say, they think that meditation instructions are to sit down and clear your mind.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, good luck. Good luck clearing your mind.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama does not clear his mind all the time. He's got 60 years of practice, but your mind is not going to be clear, and trying to push things out of your mind is that only adds energy to it. So I learned from talking to my clients that it's like that's the definition that we focus on. It's a skill about moving your attention where you want it.
And so your program, your original program was a 10-day program. You've now cut to a 5-day program. Can you talk a little bit about how it now works and what was the change in schedule?
Sure. So briefly, our program is like an intensive outpatient program. It's Monday through Friday, about 8 to 3. People locally can commute. There's a variety of lodging options in the area for people that aren't able to commute. But it's inpatient, so you show up at 8 and you're out of there by 3. The way we originally designed the program was as a 2-week, which is 10 business days, Monday through Friday, a 2-week program, which is very comprehensive, and you get a lot of information and a lot of practice. One thing that we've been noticing as we struggle to fill our chairs over the last couple of years is that the current climate for first responders, very difficult. there's a workforce issues in all sectors, but in first responders, like fire departments, are having a hard time keeping people on the line. The environment for police has become almost impossible. Not a lot of people want to sign up for these jobs anymore, and so the trickle down of that to Frontline Foundations is that it's hard for a firefighter or a police officer to get 2 weeks off to do the program. And of course, after the whole pandemic thing, it's like you finally get 2 weeks off. Maybe you're going to take your family on a vacation instead of coming to us for 2 weeks, and I totally understand that. So we made a decision to offer a 5-day program where we take all of the skills that we teach and much of the education from our 2-week program, and we just make it fit a little better into a 5-day situation. I don't think we're losing any of our content by doing that. What I think, the only thing I think is really missing is some extra detail and some more practice, which is kind of fine because people are welcome to stay beyond the 5 day. Even though we advertise now it's a 5-day program, hoping to get more clients in the door. If a client wants to stay, like, hey, can I stay next Monday and get more practice? Absolutely. And if you do stay for the second week, I will, and Josh and all of our staff, we will make it fresh for people that stay into the second week. So we've made this decision to hopefully make it easier for people that are still working to get the help that they need.
So with everything that you just said about staff being less staff, my guess is they're probably more stressed. So it seems like with everything you just said, there's even more of a need to learn this skill set. And I liked what you said in the beginning about it should be taught as a skill set, just like, how to use a hose or how to use a firearm. It should be taught from the front end instead of trying to get to the back end. Because maybe, so how do you think you overcome that?
Interesting.
I don't know. How do you get there? Maybe you guys don't know yet.
Well, we got some ideas, but Josh?
I mean, the big thing is, like you said, instead of being the back end, having it front loaded. So like going to fire academies, going to police academies, going to training programs, going to paramedic programs, and talking about it more seriously. And I say this from the standpoint of I was a firefighter paramedic for 14 years. When I was in school, and even the fire academy, the lessons that were given to you were don't drink, don't mess around with, things you shouldn't be, gambling, things like that, and take care of yourself. And that was like, a 15-minute lecture, and that was it. And that's not to like downplay that people don't realize that it's an issue. It's just that they don't think about any other way of mitigating it, because it seems like it's post-traumatic stress sometimes does not show up immediately. And so on average, after 9/11, post-traumatic stress disorder didn't show up in a lot of those men and women until 6 years later on average. And so part of that is like, sometimes it does show up right away, but some of it is maybe there's some built-in resilience factors in the anticipation you're going to see traumatic things. And like what you were saying, the idea of like, I have to manage this because nobody else can. When somebody calls 911 for me, I'm going, there's nobody coming to help me.
Yeah.
So I have to keep up that. So if we go in and we teach people about when to look for things like that, you're no longer feeling interest in things you're doing, you're getting into arguments all the time, you're struggling, you're taking a lot of sick time, those are all red flags that should be presented to people as to pay attention earlier on, that like maybe somebody needs some of these skills. And then even before that, if we can get into some of these academies and stuff and talk about the importance of skills and maintaining those things and engaging it as and incorporating it as more of a training for the job, then that's going to increase people's resiliency, and it'll increase their ability to recognize when there isn't a problem with themselves or one of their coworkers. And that's like the long-term goal. Like right now, we're trying to like catch people where they're at.
Yeah.
And but it is true that it needs to be front-loaded. Just like in firefighting, there's a huge movement for cancer prevention, and it's all about cancer prevention, and it's very important because there's huge exposure to carcinogens. There's less impetus right now currently to be like, well, how much trauma are you experiencing? Because people don't want to do it because it's part of the job. There's no Geiger counter that tells you you're saturated with trauma, time to take a break and see. So it's like two parts. It's destigmatizing it and making people understand that it's not a moral failing. It is not any. It does not mean you're not tough. It does not mean any of those things. It is a physiological response that is more ancient than the higher order brain that I was talking about.
And
so
it's literally, it's for people that are used to controlling things. It's a response you can't control, and I think that's because it's such a it's amygdala response, right? Technically, like you said, the front part of your brain, the amygdala is that,
Well,
if I'm understanding
Or is
it
it the
correctly?
primitive brain?
well,
Primitive.
there's the hippocampus, and then that's tied to memory, and amygdala is like the fear and emotional responses and stuff like that, and those are all connected, and those all talk to each other in regards to a traumatic response before the top part of your brain does.
Yeah.
So it has those automatic reactions. So yes, what you're saying is that those ancient parts of the brain are more reactionary, and that's why we have, certain things that we don't like, that like bare teeth, snakes, all these, like, these are all evolutionary things we've learned to be afraid of and react to, but with trauma, sometimes those memories aren't, like, we don't even get the time to process them before our body comes up with a solution to react to them.
One way that I've phrased it for our clients is to make it like understandable, because there's a lot of neuroscience that goes on here. If you're a firefighter or a police officer, or you're a veteran who's deployed and seen a lot of combat, all of these types of jobs, the primitive brain that we were talking about, the limbic system, is firing all the time, keeping you alive. That's what lets you, as a firefighter, scale a ladder and go punch a hole in somebody's roof. The house is on fire. Medics doing CPR in the middle of a 2-lane highway. That primitive brain lets you tunnel in and focus on the job. The types of things that happen to us when we start to talk about PTSD, or post-traumatic stress, and here's the punchline that I said I was going to get to 5 minutes ago. Punchline is your brain starts to have a hard time telling the difference between a life and death emergency that you see every day and somebody disagreeing with you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so that's like that. You wonder why people like us, I'll say that have some post-traumatic stress going on, we will often bang out a text message, a really angry response, and not even think about it, and hit send and go, man, I wish I didn't do that. Or a loved one in your house says something, you just came in the door, and you find yourself snapping at someone that you love very much, and it's like part of that is like our responsibility to, like, be nice to our family and stuff. But part of that also is your brain does have a hard time telling the difference between somebody disagreeing with you in the middle of an active fire scene, which is like, this ain't the time to have a whole higher order discussion about this. I need you to do this now. You get enough practice doing that over the course of a career, and then the next time your significant other says something to you that is like you weren't expecting, or it's a change in plans, your body is going to have that same reaction. It's like, what do you mean? We discussed that we were going to go get the boneless buffalo wings at Applebee's. How can you say that?
Boneless buffalo
It's like,
wings.
and I'm talking about this from the inside, and so is Josh. But that's a big deal. It's like realizing that, like, you're going to be responsible for cleaning up those little messes that you make in your family. But it's not because you're a uniquely bad person. It's not because you're uniquely weak, is a word that I hear a lot. It's none of that. It's a highly predictable response. The same way that if you do a triple Lindy off your roof, you might break one of your ankles. That's a predictable injury. So,
Or like, I guess I was thinking about it in the beginning, and we only have a little bit of time left, so I'll be quick. Like, there's such a big focus on football players and concussions right now. It's predictable. If they get hit in the head, they have all these testing things. They test them for concussions. They never tested for concussions. So it's predictable. If you go in to a very traumatic environment, you're going to have a predictable reaction. So it seems to me like, well, that makes sense. We have about a minute left. Believe it or not, this went fast.
Yes, that went fast.
So
You guys
if
can
you
have to
could
come
let
back.
the public know
Absolutely.
how to reach out to you, and and also just a quick thing, Mike has some mindfulness videos available if people want to learn more. But
Awesome.
so
so there's our web address, frontlinefoundations.org. Foundations, because we teach the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So frontlinefoundations.org is our website. There's a ton of information on there. There is a link on our website to my hilarious YouTube channel where I do these 2-3 minute videos from inside my truck talking about like how to deal with anger, what is mindfulness, all that kind of stuff. So check that out. We also have a social media presence on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see all kinds of different updates about what we're doing.
Great. Good, thank you. I always learn something. I have to admit that this whole idea of front loading it, I think is an amazing idea. My daughter, just disclosure, is she just got her firefighter one, and she's going through, and she's done burn building. She's going to Las Vegas to do this rappelling thing this weekend.
Cool.
She had never once talked about mindfulness, you know, and it's always these things, you know, like we're going to whitewater rescue, burn, you know, being in the building and it's burning and all these things, but never, maybe I should be able to take a deep breath and move these things out of my mind.
Yeah, that's an important
So we
part.
definitely should have you guys back sooner rather than later, because I think we have a lot more to talk about. We didn't talk on it, but we are out of time. So,
Okay.
unfortunately, community, we have to go now, but we'll see you again.
Yes. I
Thanks
hope
for
you always
having
come
us.
back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music.